In Ruth chapter 1 in our Bibles, yesterday we talked about the fact that choices have consequences, and we talked about Elimilech, God is my king, and the bad choices that he made, and perhaps some of the rationale that went into that choice, the choice to leave Bethlehem and go to Moab. And the circumstances sometimes scream at us to do something to get away from them. Negative circumstances, if we're not careful, our prayers are always, how can I get out of this? How can I get away from this? But sometimes God allows negative circumstances in our life not to get out of it and not even to get away from it, but to get something out of it, to learn from it. That's why the Bible says in James chapter 1 that we can count it all joy when we fall into different kinds of trials and temptations, knowing this, that the trying of our faith, okay, in other words, what's happening in the process of trial, that the trying of our faith worketh or produces patience. And the word patience there in James 1 means endurance. It produces patience. But let patience have her perfect work. In other words, learn what you can only learn by abiding under the trial. Certain life lessons can only be learned over time in the trial, during that time of pressure. The Bible says the better thing to pray for during trials is not extrication from the trial, but a better thing to pray for in the trial is for wisdom in the trial. If any of you lack wisdom, that's the context of that. And so we need to be praying, God, help me to see what you're doing here. Help me to understand how you're working here. Okay, so let's apply all of that to Elimilech. So Elimilech was facing this famine. Now, what should Elimilech have known? He should have known that the famine was a predicted way by which God was getting a hold of the attention of his people who had wandered from him. So Elimilech needed to abide under that trial and allow himself to be reoriented toward a focus upon God as his king. He didn't do that. He tried to get away from the trial. He tried to run from it, to remove it. So I guess my statement would be, a famine should not have caused Elimilech to go to Moab. A famine should have caused Elimilech to go to God. Always allow famine experiences in your life to remind you of your desperate need for God. Throughout the Bible, people that made decisions based upon economic circumstances alone often made really, really bad decisions. Whether that was Elimilech going to Moab or Abram going to Egypt during a time of famine, picking up Hagar. I mean, there are just all kinds of Bible examples. So here we are in Ruth chapter 1. Look at verse number 3. The Bible says, and Elimilech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelled there about 10 years. So as you look at the Bible chronology here, as you look at these events in order, we have the family moving, we have them arriving in Moab. The intention is to stay there for just a short period of time. And then the Bible teaches that Elimilech died. And the implication is that he died very soon after arrival. Now, can we give Elimilech the benefit of the doubt? I think Elimelech's intention was not to allow his family to be influenced by Moab. I think that was his intention. And I think the reason why I can say that is because his decision wasn't to stay there. His decision was to sojourn there. So Elimilech understood that this was not a place that one wants to permanently dwell. This is not a place that is a great place of permanent influence from my family. And so with that in mind, I'm sure that Elimelech had no desire for, and matter of fact, probably erected some standards to protect his boys from marrying Moabite women. I mean, after all, that marrying a Moabite woman brought a great plague upon God's people not too many years before this. God had expressly forbidden marriage of Moabites. And so I'm sure that Elimelech would want for his sons to avoid those decisions. But you know, the thing is, Elimelech died. And he no longer had that daily influence in the lives of his boys. He no longer had the opportunity to protect them in that bad place. You know the best way by which Elimelech could have protected his boys? The best way he could have protected them is to never put them in that situation in the first place. The best way he could have protected them was to have exhibited faith all the way back in Bethlehem, Ephratah. But instead, he brought them there thinking, hey, I can walk as close as I want to this edge. I'm going to be careful with my boys. But he never could have envisioned the fact that he wasn't going to survive. The pre-decision became the decision. What a sad thing in the life of Elimelech. So without a dad, without that, the restraining influence in their lives, these boys married Moabite girls. Mahlon married Ruth, and Kilion married Orpah, these Moabite girls. And in a way, they were doing exactly what their father had taught them to do. Now, does that mean that Elimelech said, hey, go marry these girls? No, I'm sure he didn't. But you know what Elimelech had done? He had made a choice based upon his own reasoning, what he thought was best for him in the moment. And what did these boys do? These boys made a choice based upon their own reasoning that they thought was best for them in the moment. So they made a choice without counsel. They made a choice devoid of Bible historical context. They made a choice that was a feel-good choice for the moment. I mean, think about it. They are behaving just like their dad. I often say to our church family, your walk talks and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. And sometimes we lament the fact that our children make bad decisions and say, boy, I told them not to do that. Yeah, but there's always two forms of counsel that we're giving our children. Okay, one form of counsel is what we say. But another form of counsel that we give our children is how we live. And the way that we live is a louder counselor than the words that we say. So you might say that Mahlon and Kilion in Ruth chapter 1, they are following the counsel of their dad. They are doing what their dad told them to do, just not verbally. Their dad told them to do that by the choices that he made. Hey, choices have consequences. Well, the Bible teaches that these two boys made this decision, so they must have been at least 20 years of age, something like that. And so now they've made this choice, and the Bible says in verse number 4, and they took them wives of the children of women of Moab, Orpah and Ruth. They dwelled there about 10 years. So it seems as if the choice to go to Moab soon followed with the death of Elimelech, and the choice of Mahlon and Kilion to marry Moabite women. And so now the boys are married to Moabite women, and they live there in Moab 10 years. Now, that seems like an awful long sojourn. Was that what Elimelech intended? I don't know. Elimelech's dead. Okay? They married these Moabite girls. Would you not anticipate that without birth control, in those days, would you not at least anticipate that one of these girls would get pregnant, have children? especially after 10 years. It seems to indicate that the boys marry and then they continue 10 years. And neither one of them is able to produce offspring. Neither one of these Moabite women is pregnant. We know that it wasn't a physical problem, certainly not with Ruth. She had a baby later on. So what's going on here? I see the providence of God, don't you? I see these choices to marry these women. God's protecting them, not allowing them to have children, not allowing those children to have the confusion of Chemosh versus Jehovah, of having a mixed bag of theology. And I mean, this is really getting complex, isn't it? You know what sin does? Sin makes life complex. You think about what's going on in our country, broken homes, and sometimes a child being raised by, let's say, a homosexual couple, and the confusion that breeds, and what are they to think, and what happens when that child comes to Christ and has a biblical mindset, and who is my mom? Who are my moms? Who is my dad? Sinful choices have consequences. And the consequences, one of the consequences of sin is confusion. And we see confusion here as a widow woman, Naomi, is doing the best she can to try to guide her sons who are making bad choices. Now you've kind of got this weird family unit of Jewish boys who are not planning to stay in this country, Moabite girls, a widow woman mother who's becoming increasingly more jaded in her thinking. I mean, this is just a really sad situation. And it's underscoring everything we've already talked about. And that is, choices have consequences. And one of the saddest consequences of a choice is when your bad choice affects the people that you love. We're going to find that Elimelech's bad choice, not only has it influenced his sons to make generationally bad choices, but it's also having a long-term deleterious effect upon Naomi, because she is becoming increasingly more bitter. She's becoming more and more upset about what's happening in her life. And so my bad choice can influence other people to make bad choices, and my bad choice can cause bitterness and resentment and ruin in the lives of the people whom I claim to love. I know that's not the happiest message to hear on a Wednesday, but it's an important message. It's a message that we need to receive. And so I hope that you'll have a good day. Enjoy your midweek service tonight, if you have one, at your local church. And we will see you again tomorrow. God bless you, my friends.